Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to MTS. My name is Jack and this is the 2021 Complete Unifi Setup Guide. If you don't know much about Ubiquiti, they use what's called software-defined networking, or SDN, meaning there's a centralized controller that tells all devices what to do. So you have a centralized, easy management interface for everything. So to run Ubiquiti's controller software, you have a range of options. You can self-host it on your own computer or server. You can also host your controller up in the cloud using something like Hostify or really any other cloud hosting provider. Now Ubiquiti, of course, has their own dedicated hardware devices to run the controller, such as the Cloud Key Gen 2 or the Cloud Key Gen 2 Plus. Now the Cloud Key Gen 2 Plus also has a hard drive bay, and that hard drive bay can be used to run their NVR solution called Unifi Protect. They also have an all-in-one device called the Unifi Dream Machine, and that's a little pill-looking device, and that's got your access point, your switch, your controller, and your router all in it. So it's really nice for like if you just want to set up something easy in your home or like give it to like mom and dad. That way they can have, a more robust wireless solution than just, whatever their ISP provides them. Now building off of the Dream Machine, Ubiquiti released the Dream Machine Pro, which is going to be the core of our network that we're going to build out today. The Dream Machine Pro has dual WAN ports, so you can either use 1 or 10 gig SFP or gigabit RJ45. It also has a 10 gig LAN port and 8 more gigabit LAN ports, which are all managed because this is a managed switch. This also runs our controller software, Unifi Protect. It's got a hard drive bay, which I already have populated with a drive. Now for most homes, 8 ports would be fine, but with our access points and cameras and all of that stuff, we're gonna need PoE. PoE is power over Ethernet, so it sends your power for all of your devices over the Ethernet cable itself. So something like your cameras or your access points will work without having to run separate power to them. And the UDM Pro doesn't have any PoE ports. So what we're going to do is supplement that with our USW 16 PoE Gen 2 switch. Now the Gen 2 switches have a little touchscreen on them as well as the UDM Pro, and you can use that for some cool features like, changing the brightness or checking port status or checking, the names of some devices that are plugged into ports if they're a recognized device in the Unifi controller. It features 2 1 gig SFP ports, 16 LAN ports with 8 of them being able to provide PoE. Now this is great for wired networking, but not all of our devices have a wired network jack, nor is it always convenient to run a cable. So we're gonna need something for Wi-Fi. Ubiquiti has a range of wireless access points. You can get anything from the APAC Lite. Mine, I have done a shell swap on, so I have put all the guts of my APAC Lite into this old Apple Airport base station from the year 2000. I just think it's really cool, makes it kind of more desk friendly. But so you can get the APAC Lite. This handles 2x2 MIMO with a maximum throughput speed of 200 megabits per second to any connected device. Now stepping up from that, you can get the Unifi long range access point, the APAC LR. I don't recommend that access point. It's not much of a step up over the APAC Lite, and for just a little bit more money you can get such a better access point, and that being the APAC Pro. Now the APAC Pro has 3x3 MIMO. The APAC Pro is what I installed the most of. I've deployed over 250 of these guys and they work phenomenally. I've deployed about another 100 of the APAC Lites. That was before I really found out about the Pros or thought the Pros were something worth buying. So learn from my mistake. Install the Pros, they're great. You can also step up to one of Ubiquiti's slightly newer access points, the Nano HD. This is a 4x4 MIMO access point, and with it being called the Nano HD, that HD stands for high density. This guy would be great for a small business or everybody in a waiting room. These guys are fantastic. They're super small, they're the same size as the APAC Lite, which mine's been made slightly bigger by the shell swap, but still, this is a fantastic access point and I love these guys. Now you can't always mount an access point to the ceiling. Say you're doing something on the first floor of a house where you can't, run cables up to the ceiling, or really you just need a desktop-based access point. That's where the Flex HD comes in. This is essentially the same thing as the Nano HD, but crammed into a cylinder. So this guy's really nice and small and compact. You can fit on a desk nicely. And again, it's basically the same thing as the Nano HD. So this is a high density access point. Now Ubiquiti does have some new Wi-Fi 6 stuff in the works. I know they've released the Wi-Fi 6 version of the APAC Lite. I still really wouldn't recommend that access point. The one that I'm really waiting to be able to recommend currently is not out of early access, so I can't really tell you guys about it. And it's really cool, but it's not really something that's worth waiting for. Wi-Fi 6 isn't gonna make a massive difference in your home unless you have something like multi-gigabit internet. Now configuring this for home use, the access points that I'm gonna use is gonna be an APAC Pro. This is gonna handle everything upstairs. So for the downstairs area of the house, I'm gonna use the Unifi Flex HD. Now this is typically gonna be because I'm not gonna have access to run wires to the ceiling in the first floor of the house. It's really easy to run wires up in the attic and just plop one of these guys up there. Now, my family does a lot of entertaining. We have guests over all the time, and our backyard sees a lot of use. So for providing Wi-Fi out there, we're gonna use the AP-AC Mesh Pro. Now the Mesh Pro is a pretty beefy access point for outdoor use. I've deployed a bunch of these guys and I haven't had an issue with them. They're weatherproof and they have dual network jacks so that you can pass through. The first thing to do with our setup is to configure the Dream Machine Pro. Now for starters, we need to give it a WAN connection. You can use the RJ45 port for most installations, but I happen to have a 10 gig SFP cable here, so I can put that in, and now I'm getting my WAN connection over a 10 gig fiber line. Next, we need to connect the UDM Pro to our USW16 PoE. This switch doesn't support 10 gig, so I'm not gonna bother using our 10 gig SFP Plus port to connect it to this switch. I'm gonna use a simple Cat6 patch cable. So I'm just gonna go from port 8 here to port 16 here. That way my cables are nice and over to the side, black matching cables for interconnecting devices. Now for connecting our access points, I'm also gonna use some short patch cables, but these cables would be longer going to wherever these devices are gonna be deployed. So our first 8 ports are our PoE Plus ports, so I'm gonna start populating them with one for our access point, our Flex HD, another one for our AP-AC Pro going into port 2. Our Mesh Pro, we can put this in port 3. And because our UDM Pro supports Unifi Protect, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw on a G3 Flex camera here. And with our Dream Machine Pro and the switch booted up, the Dream Machine is now telling us to download the Unifi app. And you should know that you can also set up the UDM Pro through your web browser on your laptop or your desktop. Now launching the Unifi app, it says that new UDM Pro found. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click setup. But if this doesn't work, you can also just click on the plus at the top right-hand corner of the screen, and it should find the device over Bluetooth. So it says connecting, connected. What do we wanna name it? All right, let's go to, I'm gonna call it Goodbye 2020. So I'm gonna say that this is gonna be a personal setup. Next. Great, this is my UI.com account. I can also choose a different account, but I'm gonna hit next. Face ID, great. Auto optimize my network, sure. Hit on next. Update schedule every day. I'm gonna say every week on Saturday at 3 a.m. That sounds good. Starting, it's gonna do a speed test right now and tell us how fast our internet connection is. We can see that we're hitting about 50 meg and I'm getting about 20 up. 20 up is normal for me. That 50 meg down, I should be getting 100. I typically get 100, but my router's been acting weird, which is why I'm gonna be really happy to actually install the UDM Pro. I did already have a script written for a very negative UDM Pro review because I have had awful experiences with this guy, but with the new software update, it's been perfect and I'm now ready to actually deploy this guy. So we're gonna go ahead and actually tell it right now what speeds I should be getting. This way it knows, kind of what my limits are, and if anything happens where it drops below that range, it should send me a notification, or at least I can tell it to send me a notification. So we're gonna hit next. Goodbye 2020, Chicago, time zone. Everything looks good here. And it's gonna download the firmware update. All right, so the Dream Machine is now telling me that it is done with our setup. And so we can go to Unifi/home on our local network or unifi.ui.com to manage it over the internet with Cloud Connect. So I'm gonna hit go to dashboard. Face ID connects. Now, one thing I really should note, to set up the UDM Pro, you need to have an internet connection, as well as to set up the regular UDM. You also need to set it up with your Ubiquiti single sign-on account. You can't create a local account at the time of setup. Once you're done with the setup though, you can go in and create a local account. All right, it says internet connection, AT&T Uverse. So if we go over here to our devices page, we can see the UDM Pro and all of our devices waiting for adoption. So I'm gonna go ahead and adopt the USW16 PoE. We're gonna adopt the M Pro, adopt and upgrade. AP-AC Pro, adopt. And our Flex HD, we're gonna adopt that. All right, so this should go ahead and update our devices and they should appear here in Unifi. In the meantime, I'm going to switch to using my computer so that way we can go more in depth in the settings of Unifi. Okay, so we're here at a blank web page. Now what we need to do is go ahead and get into our network. So I'm gonna go to unifi.ui.com. And this is gonna take me to a page where I need to sign on with single sign-on. And if you're unfamiliar with Ubiquiti's single sign-on, it's essentially their version of a cloud account. So you use this through the store, to buy things. You can also use it for managing all of your networks, all of your controllers, and it keeps everything really simple. So I'm gonna go ahead and get logged in here. Okay, so here we can see we have our Goodbye 2020. This is our Unifi Dream Machine Pro. It says right here, it also gives us our version 1.8.3. So if I look at the UDM Pro here, you can also click on manage users, and because you have to set up the Dream Machines with a single sign-on account, what you can do from here is create admins, add users that are local users, so that we don't have to give out your single sign-on password to people. So what we can do here is we can create a new admin. I always create a new administrator account for any network that I might not be the only one maintaining, so that way anybody local can get into the controller, because I'm sure as hell not going to be giving out my single sign-on information, and I don't want to have to create new users for everybody that's going to maintain the device. So I'm just going to create a local admin here, add admin, so we can change this to a local account access only, and you need a first and a last name. So let's go with local admin. Limited admin, these guys, limited admins can view and manage the controllers and stuff, but super admins, if you're doing something like Unifi Access or their NVR solution, Unifi Protect, they can go in and make changes to users, permissions, and all of that stuff. So we're gonna make a super admin. We're gonna change it to local access only because they really want super admins to be signed in with a Ubiquiti account. So for local username, administrator, and local password, let's do capital admin 12345. Cool, we can add that user. So now there is a local administrator, but we can go back over to here to our controller and we can launch Unifi Network. Now Unifi Network, this is where you maintain everything in Unifi. So we can see our download real-time usage, our upload in real time. We can see our system uptime of 2 days and 22 hours and 51 minutes. If you cannot tell by that information, I'm recording this a couple days later than my first part of the video. And we can view our traffic of all of our clients. So if I go to wired here, we can see that it's all wired. And if we go over to wireless, it says we have no clients that are active on the network. Oh, this is cool. It looks like it's giving us a little graphic showing us what ports have activity going down based on what's plugged into them. So we can see port 8 in our 10 gig WAN. So we can go ahead and come over here to devices and we can see all of our devices here. We have our UDM Pro, our USW16 PoE, our Mesh Pro access point, our APAC Pro, and our Flex HD. We also have that second APAC Pro that I added just, to kind of simulate if this was for a small business versus a house. Now the Dream Machine Pro is a little bit intense for a house, but I know in my area, AT&T started rolling out gigabit fiber to the home for $50 a month. So with gigabit internet now being more readily available, I can see a lot of people doing something like the UDM Pro. Now, if we come in here, we can click on add and adopt our APAC Pro, our second one. Now again, you don't need 2 APAC Pros for a house. I mean, really 2 access points for a house my size is perfect. I have a third one just in my basement because I'm crazy. So it's provisioning our access point now. So that means it's essentially giving it all of its settings. So the Wi-Fi network to be broadcasting and all of the other settings such as radio strength and all of that. But if we come over here to clients, we can see we have Mini-Me, that is my laptop, and we have our G3 Flex camera, which we'll get into in just a moment on how that's useful for us. What we can do is we can come over here to our settings though and do some more advanced configuration. Let's get rid of this pop-up, and I'm gonna go to the classic settings because I prefer them. So we can change our site name here to something, more friendly. So I'm just gonna call it MTS, something easy. And we have our wireless uplink, all of our settings down here. We can automatically upgrade the device's firmware. Then we can come down here and apply our changes. And you can also see our provider capabilities. So this essentially, we can tell it to alert us if our throughput speed is not what we want it to be. And we also have our SSH stuff, so I can disable SSH, but I can also re-enable it. And then we can see our LED options in our screens. So if we come up here to wireless networks, we haven't created a Wi-Fi network yet. You can go ahead and create a Wi-Fi network through the app if you need to get your computer online in order to be able to manage these settings, but my computer already has an internet connection, so I was able to go ahead and create our wireless network here on the controller page. So I'm gonna go to create a new wireless network. We're just gonna call this one MTS. And we can enable the wireless network, WPA personal, and let's create a password for this. So I'm just gonna call this is password 1. Cool, and we can put it on our LAN network. That's our main internal network. We can also apply guest policies to this network. That becomes more useful if we create a new network called MTS guest. Cool, we can make this an open network, or we can make it WPA2 personal, and we'll just make the password welcome MTS. Now I'm gonna put this on our LAN for right now, and I'm gonna apply guest policies. Now some of the things that guest policies add is it adds client isolation and some tighter security controls. And you can go in and create a guest user profile that all the guest policies apply to. Some of the other things you can do with the guest policies is you can go in and set bandwidth caps. So you can say that all the guests only get, a maximum of say 20 meg down and 2 up. So that way somebody that's staying with you or over at your house isn't essentially downloading all of the torrents of every movie that they want to add to their Plex library, eating up your internet bandwidth. So we can apply our guest policies, and coming down here to the advanced options, we just take this box. We can say whether we want it to be on 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. We can also do fast roaming and prevent our SSID from being broadcasted. That's great for if you're doing a hidden network. And I'm just gonna go down here and click on save, and we have our guest network. We can also come over here to our new networks and create a new network. So we can call this one our guests network. Interface LAN, VLAN, we're gonna give it VLAN 20. Gateway IP/subnet, we're gonna make this 192.168.1. Or actually I'm gonna make this a .2.2.1/24. Our MTS is gonna be our domain name. Update DHCP range, boom, that populates it all for us with all of our IP addresses that we're gonna get. Click on save, boom. Now we can come over here to our wireless networks again, go to MTS guests, and we can change this one to use our guests network. Now, because we have guest policies applied, our guests can't see any other devices on the network. So if your buddy comes over with his phone and tries to get on your Wi-Fi, and he's on the guest network, he's not gonna be able to see something like your phone or your computer. Now we can go one step further than that to strengthen our network by going to routing and firewall. Click on firewall, we wanna do plan in. We can go this block guests from main. Cool, so we're gonna do IPv protocol, all logging. We don't need any of this stuff, but we need a network. So for our network, our guests network is not going to be seeing any of our main network. Save. Perfect, and now we can create another rule here that's gonna do block LAN from guests. This is already set to drop. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do network, LAN, network, guests network. And now with these two firewall rules, anything that happens on one network stays on that network. So say you have a guest come over and they have a virus on their computer, it's not gonna affect or jump to any of your computers because it's on a physically separated network. So what we can also do is come in here to threat management. Now, threat management is really cool. So what we can do is we have two different modes, intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system. So I'm gonna go in and do prevention system and apply the changes. Now, what we can also do is, we can also come in here and change all of our settings here for like mobile malware, botnet stuff, more malware, SQL, say you don't want any, or IMAP, say you don't want anybody having SQL, or nobody should be telnetting into your network, turn on telnet. A bunch of stuff like that, so we can just apply our changes here. And now we have a much more secure and much more unified network, and we have easy control over everything. Now, because we just set up all of our Wi-Fi networks, I can go ahead and pull out my phone, and let's see if we can find our Wi-Fi network. So I just went ahead and joined our MTS network using the password we set up. This is password 1. I'm gonna go ahead and run a speed test right now and see what our speeds are looking like. Looks like we're getting about 70, 80 or down, 76, 78 down. Keep in mind also, all these access points are right now set up in my basement, and I'm on the 2nd floor of my house, so they're making it through 2 floors, and we're still getting 77 by 20, so that's pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and run a speed test on the computer here and see how that differs. Looking at about 85, 86, 87. Oh, okay, we're jumping up there a little bit, and we should be getting about 20 up. So yeah, essentially we're getting almost our full speed over Wi-Fi. And I wanna also point out that performance is incredibly impressive because right now, all of these access points are sitting right on top of each other down in my basement. So there is a lot of interference happening. We have 4 access points right on top of each other, each broadcasting 2 SSIDs. So that's pretty impressive that 2 stories up, I'm still able to get the full internet speed on my phone. So now let's get into Unifi Protect. If you remember, we have that G3 camera set up downstairs. So I can come up here to the Unifi logo, come over here to Protect, and we can get started. Now, I already have a hard drive that I put in there, and we can go to our devices. Add devices, we can see our G3 Flex. Let's call it the basement cam. Camera's obvious. Add devices. And we can see that it is adopting, and we should be getting our real-time feed coming up here shortly. All right, so now that the camera's done updating, we can come in here and look at our live view. We can switch from 720p to 1080p Full HD. Let's do that, and this is my music setup down in the basement. You can kind of see the Mesh Pro access point right here. My drum kit, this looks pretty good. But we can also come in here to our camera settings and we can turn on and off the microphone. We can change the brightness and all the manual settings of our camera. And if we come into general, what we can do is we can turn on and off the status light. I like to turn off the status light because say I accidentally unplug my camera or whatever. I don't want the camera to be like, oh, hey, I'm not recording. Hey, I don't see motion. I don't want to give anything away that the camera might not be working. So I'm gonna turn off the logo as well. And I'm also gonna add the camera name and the time. We're gonna click on apply changes. And very shortly we should see our live view update. And now it says our timestamp and the basement, which is pretty nice. So we can close out of this and go over to recording. Now, I have it set to record 25 frames per second at 100% image quality and motion events. So I like to record 10 seconds before the motion event and 10 seconds after the motion event. A motion event is essentially any time a camera sees motion. And I'm gonna say it's gonna take about 2 seconds to classify an event as motion. That way, you know, a fly going right in front of the camera is not gonna trigger it. And I wanted to you can also change it to when to record. So you can say it'll only record on motion events. So anytime it sees motion, it'll start recording. It'll save 10 seconds before it sees motion and 10 seconds after it sees motion. But I like to just log motion events. I like to record the cameras always because I've got a 1 terabyte hard drive with 1 or 2 cameras being used. So I'm gonna say always. And you can go in and add privacy zones. Privacy zones are essentially different areas of the screen that are marked out that won't trigger a motion event, but they also don't get recorded. Now, a likely use for one of these cameras would be to be mounted outside of your house. You could block off the street and the sidewalk, so that way really only anybody that's like on your property is gonna trigger your motion events. Or depending on your state and county's laws, you might not be able to record anybody's houses across the street. You could use that to mask off and not record any of that. We can come over here to our live view of our big cameras. Now I went ahead and turned out the lights down in the basement so you can see its night vision performance. I can't exactly make out the KRK logo on this speaker, but I can read line 6, I can tell that's a Roland drum, and this would be good enough to capture just about anybody's face. So for about $750, we have a really robust solution that we can easily expand if we need it. If we want to add a doorbell camera, Ubiquiti has their own version of that. If we want to add more cameras to the backyard, the front yard, wherever, inside the house, in the garage, you can add that. If we want to add in more access points, say we're not getting coverage enough in the garage and you really want something out there, throw up an APAC light. That'd be perfect for that, and it's relatively inexpensive. So that's really the power of Ubiquiti. The ease of access, the ease of management, the cost, and the scalability. And with features like that, it's really hard to not recommend them. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something. If you did, drop a like. Are you running Ubiquiti stuff? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.